in my late 40s, I'd started at age 26, a boutique hotel company that became the second largest in the US. It was called Joie de Vivre, means joy of life, based in San Francisco. And we had 52 boutique hotels around California, mostly in the Bay Area. And then in my late 40s, everything that could go wrong did go wrong. I had a long-term relationship end against my choice. I have an African-American foster son who is an adult who's going to prison wrongfully. I lost 5 male friends to suicide between 2008 and 2010. I was having my own suicide ideation because I felt like a prisoner. I didn't want to be running this company that now had 3,500 employees. I'm a bit of a creative type. Yes, I got a Stanford MBA, but I love to be creative and I like my freedom, and I felt none of that. And we were going into the Great Recession, and so I had an NDE. I died from an allergic reaction to an antibiotic, and I basically decided in my late 40s I'm going through some kind of midlife. I don't know what it is, crisis. I now consider it a chrysalis. Transformation happens, but I got to the other side of it and I said, my God, we are really bad as a society about creating the social infrastructure to support people in midlife.
Right.
And then out of the blue, I got asked by the founders of Airbnb to be their modern elder, someone who's as curious as they are wise. And I did that for 4 years full-time, 3.5 years part-time, 7.5 years total. And that's what led me to deciding to write a book called Wisdom at Work, The Making of a Modern Elder, and starting the Modern Elder Academy, better known as MEA now. And I did this partly because I think about my friends, one of whom was named Chip, who took their own lives, ages 42 to 52. And I want to create an alternative, a place where people, I will tell you, most of the people who come are not at that stage. They're more like, oh my gosh, I don't like what I'm doing anymore. Or I feel stressed because I'm a sandwich generation. I'm taking care of my parents while also taking care of my kids. I'm getting divorced, and I don't know what that's going to feel like being on the other side of that. We go through a lot of transitions in midlife.
Yeah.
We have very little, when we go through them in adolescence, there's a lot of support. Now, not to say that adolescents aren't going through a very difficult time these days, but in midlife, there's virtually no social support or infrastructure. And that's why MEA is the world's first midlife wisdom school, to help people to actually navigate their transitions, cultivate purpose, and learn how to own their wisdom. What have you learned along the way that might qualify as wisdom that you can share with someone else?
But what I think is, and Chip writes about everything he just mentioned in this book, which I held up before you came on, and which so many people in the community have already read. And once we started advertising, this conversation went out and bought, and where Chip goes through the 12 reasons. But what I thought is so great about both of our communities, right, and they're not ours, we're just all in this together, is that these are people who are in pursuit, right? You talk about people who come to the Modern Elder Academy. You yourself were like, wait a minute, there's something else out there for me. I'm a creative. I'm not living what I'm meant to be living. There must be something else. And I shouldn't be scared of midlife. I should embrace it. I should reframe it. And there must be other people out there like me.
Yeah, and the word pursuit scares me a little bit, because the pursuit of happiness is, I've always hated that term, partly because if you look in the dictionary under the word pursuit, it means to chase with hostility.
I
Sort of
use
like,
that word pursuit because I was in a meeting yesterday on the Sergeant Shriver Peace Institute, and the people on the board said both of your parents were in pursuit of humanity. And I always use the tagline, moving humanity forward. And I thought to myself, I love that, in pursuit of humanity, in
well,
pursuit
that's
of the
exactly
good.
right.
And so it's a compliment that I'm using that with you, because
Yeah.
I'm using it for your community, because I actually have a friend who's down there right now who wrote to me, Tom Sharon, from there, and who's in pursuit of growth, who's, out there. It's so brave, I think, to go to the Modern Elder Academy. I think it's so brave to be in the Sunday paper community, to say, there's something more there for me. I've raised my kids. I've been in a marriage. I'm taking care of my parents. I took care of my spouse. I've been a lawyer for this. I want to try something new. That takes incredible balls.
Yes. Yeah. How do we own our age? How
Yeah,
do we
at
own our
every age.
at every age? I like to say that I'm age fluid. We talked about gender fluidity these
Yeah.
days. To be age fluid means that you're all the ages you've ever been and will ever be. You're not defined by your chronological age or your generation, because you see age as a costume, and it's an identity that you can put on or take off. And your very beautiful essay from this past Sunday paper, it's an interesting one, and maybe even a provocation for our president to, and I'm not saying, I don't want to get too political here, but to say, gosh, Joe, Mr. President, is it time for you to actually realize that from age 29 to 81, you have been, in a public office holder?
Yeah.
And is there a new identity? You had a beautiful line you said, there's more to you than you know.
Mm.
Jimmy Carter is about to turn 100 on October 1st. And there is more to Jimmy Carter than he knew or that we knew post being president. And I'm not saying here, and don't, in the chat, beat me up for saying I'm saying that Joe Biden has to leave office. I'm not saying that. What I am saying is that I hope he understands his options, because one of the key things about getting older is to realize you have more options, not less. And that is blasphemous in an ageist society. An ageist society particularly says, as you get older, your options shrink. If you choose to want them to shrink, they can. But in many ways, it's in our 50s, in our 60s, and our 70s when we are liberated from, taking care of parents, taking care of kids, liberated from the pursuit of successism, someone else's definition of success, not our own. We're reading from someone else's script, not our own. So, what I find at MEA, and we've had over 5,000 alumni from 50 countries come to either our Baja campus or our Santa Fe campus. What I found is that what people are waking up to is that at age 50 or 60 or whatever age, the average age of the person who comes here is 54. And if you're 54 and you're going to live till 90, you have as many years of adulthood ahead of you as you have behind you. Because 18 to 54 is 36 years. 54 to 90 is 36 years. And so when you realize that, and you start asking a question like, 10 years from now, what will I regret if I don't learn it or do it now? You realize that anticipated regret is a form of wisdom. And I started learning Spanish at age 57 and started learning how to surf at age 57 because I asked that question living in Mexico. So I think we as midlifers have to sort of look at, how do we want to consciously and intentionally curate the second half of our life and be less focused on what do we look like and more on what do we feel like?
So what do we feel like? Several people wrote in and said, I can't afford to leave the job that I'm in. I'm in my 50s. I'm still taking care of my parents. I'm taking care of a spouse who might have Alzheimer's or dementia. I'm taking care of a disabled child. For those people, who really do feel trapped in by the responsibilities of life, right? How do they begin kind of perhaps emotionally or mentally to carve out space if they can't give up that job that they have to, because it gives them their health care, if they can't move away because they are taking care of parents or a spouse, right? Life is in their way.
Yes, absolutely. There's a woman who is a litigator, and she was 60 years old, and she was taking care of a spouse who was a lot older than her. She had 3 kids in college still, and she had kids later in life. And so she felt like she had to continue to be a litigator, and she hated it. I mean, arguing and, negotiating all day long. She felt like it was taking an emotional toll on herself. And she came to MEA, and she realized that, there are 4 pathways to purpose in life: something that excites you, something that agitates you, something that you're curious about, or something from earlier in your life that you were passionate about that you've neglected. And she started having dreams. This is at our Baja campus, on the beach. She started having dreams about her grandmother. And she realized that as a kid, she, as a teenager, she would go over to her grandma's house and they would bake pies together. And she has this visceral reaction when she goes into a bakery. She thinks of her grandmother. She started having dreams about her grandmother in Baja, like she's walking on the beach with her grandmother and she's like baking pies with her grandmother. And then she realized as the week went on, I want to go to pastry chef school. I don't have to quit my job yet. I know I have the responsibilities right now in the family of being the breadwinner. But over the next 2 years, I am going to learn how to become a pastry chef. I'm going to do it part-time. I'm going to do YouTube to start with, and then I'm going to actually take
Mm.
an actual part-time pastry chef class in San Francisco. She's based in San Francisco. And I'm going to learn how to be a pastry chef because guess what? 2 years from now, when my last kid is out of college, I actually want to create a bakery. And that's what I want to do. So you can, if you're a writer, if you're somebody who's like there's a woman here who I just had lunch with at the MEA campus here in Santa Fe, and she's been a communications director for a long time, really good PR person. And then she got laid off by a big, huge company. And she's sort of at a stage in her life where she doesn't know what to do. And she has this beautiful idea for a book. And she's a great writer, but she's never written a book. So, like, how do we take the baby steps? How do you write some blog posts around this topic such that you can start to get excited about what you want to write? She does have space in her life to be able to do this. And she doesn't have a financial, but her husband has passed away. So long story short is take the baby steps. And you don't have to do it all overnight. But the value in the baby steps is, first of all, number one, to get some familiarity with this thing you'd like to do, to realize it's not out of touch and out of your reach, but also to start getting better at it. So that by the time you actually do have the space to really do whatever it is you want to do, you've got some momentum.
I love that. I love
Yeah.
that, taking the baby steps. Julie Parker talked here about the Wisdom Well, which is Chip's mini blog on the Modern Elder Academy website. He also has a newsletter that is really good. So you can go to the Wisdom Well. You can follow his blog. Obviously, we're talking a lot about the book, or this has got everything. And he really, I think, very well kind of, puts it down into 12 different lessons. But his blog does other things, obviously, as well on there. But let me just ask you a couple of things here. Kat here said, what are the ingredients that make up wisdom?